I've clearly scared you with my convincing spooky costume. Fret not, I am not a small child with premature balding and extreme existentialism. No, I'm a full-grown adult who is fully bald with severe existentialism. While this insane microspace of an office tell might be too small for the Great Pumpkin, I have something even better. Card games. Spooky card games. Give me a few minutes to tell you about them, and we'll get right into it. And let's start with
Dracula vs. Van Helsing.
Dracula vs. Van Helsing is a two-player game of filling the shoes of the titular characters with very different goals. Before the game is even set up, you notice how elaborate the production is. Mondu Games and artist Weaverson Santiago make quite an effort to immerse you right away. After you remove the boards and the card holders, everything that remains is contained within a spooky coffin. Inside are components that really help you ease into the setting, including various townsfolk who seem innocent until you realize they all have vampiric potential.
the game does push the definition of cards by a Western traditional sense in that they're thicker and they don't bend, but they're much closer to Korean Hwatu cards, which are thick and difficult to shuffle with my big meaty claws.
The board is set up with each district of the quiet town populated with 4 innocent citizens each. Dracula will spend the game trying to convert these cheery folks to their wild side, and will win if he turns an entire district into one big monster mash. On the other side of the table, Van Helsing has a much simpler task of killing Dracula, killing him until he's dead.
Time, monster! You don't belong in this world!
Now, each player will draw cards, 1 for each district on the map. Then, on your turn, you simply draw a card and either discard it or exchange it with one of the cards in your hand. Whichever one you do discard is going to have a fun little effect on it. Now, this is the meat of the game. You want to get rid of low numbers, but lower number cards are going to have effects that help your opponent.
The number 1 card will force you to expose one of the cards in your hand. That's not ideal, but you don't want to be stuck with such low numbers. Meanwhile, the 7 card lets you change what color is strongest, which could turn the entire tide of the game, but you are letting go of one of the highest values in the deck.
Each turn will have you sighing as you try to predict what sacrifice is going to have the best payoff. You'll keep going back and forth until either the deck runs out, or you or your opponent call it. You give them one more turn, and then you begin the face-off.
Starting at District 1, you will reveal what card resides in each spot. If Van Morrison wins, Dracula will lose one of his adorable heart bits. If Dracula wins, he can give one citizen in the district a taste for the red stuff. After all 5 districts are resolved, you'll move a little ship meeple to the next dock and begin a fresh new round.
All of this really gives an excellent sense of back and forth. You have to stay on your toes as your opponent can switch cards with you or change the color ranking, throwing a tiny banana peel in your way and sending you off the rainbow road. Each reveal really has this tense moment with small pop-offs as you win or lose a district.
As Van Halen, you're sweating districts like an old draconian Joseph McCarthy, fearing the growing tide of folks sympathetic to the color red and owning the means of production. Meanwhile, Dracula is very much a Street Fighter character, hoping he blocks all of President Van Buren's mix-ups and not getting comboed into oblivion.
And overall, it works. It's definitely successful in its efforts to give you the dual sense of a 2-player game. That said, I don't find myself jumping to play it. Its thrills are much smaller and less consistent than other two-player games. That and luck has a massive factor in this one, and I find one unlucky round can easily gas out me or my opponent if we can immediately swing the pendulum back.
The game also goes to Drac if the little boat makes its way past the 5th dock, which feels a touch tacked on if I'm being honest.
Dracula versus Van Helsing is smart. And you can be clever in this. The big moves exist, and one good move can turn the tides completely. But I can't guarantee they'll give those same feelings every time. For my recommendation, I'd say its design and production are amazing for such a small box. And the game itself is fun, let me be clear. But overall, I am someone who really values the flow of a game, and the inconsistency I experienced here left me wanting more. But maybe the world of vampires isn't to your liking. Maybe you need something a little more human.
Jekyll versus Hyde!
Enter Jekyll versus Hyde, the story of a man's inner conflict as he fights for self-control. Something us board game hobbyists might be a little familiar with. Back on topic. Despite the subject's Scottish origins, this game is actually 100% Korean, produced by Mondu Games, designed by Galnil, and the artist Vincent Dutrete, who may or may not be French, but resides here in Korea, so it counts.
So Jekyll vs. Hyde is as Korean as kimchi and soju. If you're familiar with the art of Monsieur Dutrete, you will not be surprised to discover the absolute choice illustrations across the board and each card. What you will be surprised to find is that the score tracker is full metal and might be made of actual tungsten.
So, a monster-based, asymmetrical, two-player card game produced by Mondu. Are we retreading old ground? Well, give me a second to explain how this game paves its own way. See, Jekyll vs. Hyde is a trick-taking game. If that term is unfamiliar for you, stick with me, I'll do my best to cover it all. What you do need to know is that trick-taking is predominantly a genre that is best at 3 to 5 players. Only recently has two-player trick-taking really become more common. So, does it stack up?
The game is played over 3 rounds or less. One player will don the top hat of Dr. Jekyll, while the other will wear the scowl of Mr. Hyde.
On the board, the score tracker will be set on the far end of Jekyll's side. Typically in a two-player game, you'll put the score tracker somewhere in the middle with some sort of back and forth in a type of tug-of-war. However, in this game, it's all about Jekyll trying to fight off Hyde's almost inevitable takeover of his mind.
If he can prevent the Vibranium Bust from making it to the complete opposite side after 3 rounds, Jekyll wins. If it does reach past Hyde's grimacing sneer, then the barbaric villain is the victor. The cards represent the vices and sins of our protagonists, Oman, Uno, and Tamyo.
Each player is dealt a hand of cards. Before the round begins, they will both exchange cards equal to the round's number. So, 1 for the first round, 2 for the second, 3 for the third. Then, to start the game, Jekyll will lead with the first trick.
In the trick, he will play a card, and whatever color it is, the opponent must respond with the same color, and the higher number wins. If they don't have the color, Hyde can play any other card. When this happens, the numbers become irrelevant. But who wins? Well, let's check the board. See, the first card played in the round dictates what the weakest suit is. The next color played will decide the middle suit, and the remainder will become the strongest color.
This will decide who wins the trick in case two colors come into contact, regardless of their number. The winner of the trick will make a pile of them over in their corner and then lead the next trick. If they win again, they'll take that pile and set it next to the first one. Now, keep in mind, just because you're winning tricks doesn't equate to winning the game. Put a little pin in that, we'll come back to it later. This is all pretty straightforward, but I've been hiding a fun surprise up my sleeve. The potion cards.
You'll notice the tokens that represent the colors have little icons on them. Well, instead of a colored card, you can instead play a potion. The color the potion is opposite of will activate the power on that color's token. If the potion is met with a purple card, whoever wins the trick will actually snatch another trick pile from their opponent. Green will cause the players to exchange 2 cards in their hands immediately. Red is chaotic and will reset the suits completely. Play will continue until their hands are empty. Once the round is over, players check the difference in their total tricks won. The difference in those tricks is the distance the unobtainium obelisk scoots across the board.
The rules here are very simple. It does not take long to get right into the action. But that simplicity is deceiving, as the actual depth of the game goes far deeper than the Mariana Trench. And all of that, almost all of that, comes from the very last part of those rules, the difference in the tricks. See, both players are playing the exact same game, but with very different goals. And that is what makes this game so special. Jekyll has to navigate control. Their dream result is that both players end up with 5 tricks each, equaling 0 and keeping that score tracker right in place. Now, they have to dance on a tightrope, weaving between wins and losses. One small misstep, and then the scale can go flying in the other direction, driving him closer and closer to Mr. Hyde. Now, Hyde doesn't care if he wins or loses. What he cares about is that all the tricks end up on one side. He wants to blast Jekyll and take all the tricks for himself. Or maybe he wants to keep losing over and over, bringing that obsidian paperweight closer to chaos. And those potions! These potions add a fantastic fuel to an already massive fire. Say, Jekyll's feeling a little too confident that he's mastered the art of balance. Well, Jekyll just has to play a perfectly planned purple potion, and not only will he win the trick, but he'll steal one from Jekyll, causing a massive imbalance. Maybe Jekyll thinks, these cards might help me win or lose too much, so throwing out a green potion can not only help you out, but can also make your opponent compromise their own game plan. Not only that, but a red potion can be just as discombobulating, as your opponent's entire green hand went from being terribly powerful to just terrible.
This dichotomy makes this game thematic. The art and components are nice, prestigious even, but on their own, it's still an abstract game.
The objectives each player goes into the game with is what makes this game an immersive experience. There's no asymmetrical powers. After all, these players are practically playing the same person. The difference is all in the psyche. Jekyll does his best to tame the beast, never indulging too deeply into temptation and keeping control of the situation. When you play perfectly, methodically, you get a real sense of being in charge. You're playing 4D chess while your opponent is failing to boot up solitaire. Meanwhile, Hyde wants to let loose. He wants imbalance and chaos and really overwhelm poor Jekyll. I get a real villainous thrill as I drop another one, and feign pain as I lose yet again as my opponent takes their 8th trick. You're the bad guy, letting out an evil laugh against a person as on the other side of the table, watching as their plans fall to your superior might. Cards on the table. If you can't tell, I love Jekyll vs. Hyde. I just love this game. It is easily the best two-player trick-taking game, and one of the best two-player games I've played, period. The closest thing to a nitpick, I would say, is maybe the luck of the draw, like any card game. But really, it is what you make it. Newer players might feel that it's a tad random, but with some good faith, some persistence and patience, it really doesn't take long to see how you can start laying traps, clever counters. It's just so incredible how a game so simplistic can be this smart and this engaging. I mean, really, my only complaint truly is that it's only 2 players, which means I can't serve it to a large number of people. Fortunately, we have
SEERS Catalog.
We can finally stretch out and enjoy a game with more than a single opponent. SEERS Catalog is a re-implementation of the underground hit Of What's Left by YouTuber and potential werewolf Taylor Reiner, with art by the Queen of Japan herself, Saibepu. He decided to only sell like 6 copies of the game, and surprise, surprise, I missed the boat. I'm not mad. I'm not resentful to Taylor for never selling the game again, that he has a larger channel, or his bountiful hair, or witty charisma, or... SEERS Catalog can entertain up to 5 people with paranormal fun. We've had area control, trick-taking, and now we return to that old well known as card shedding.
The full moon is rising, and werewolves will soon be upon the party. You are all seers, top academics and mystics of the paranormal, and will utilize all the tools you got off the employee catalog to fight off the lichens. Each player will acquire 1 token, 12 suited cards, 2 artifacts, and a wild card. Whoever has the go first artifact will start the round.
SEERS Catalog can start with a player playing a single card, matching sets, or a suited run. Going clockwise, if a player wants in, they have to match the player's trick with the same number of cards, but at a higher value. Now, you do want to slim down your hand, but maybe playing a card now could ruin your big massive play later, so you can choose to pass. All of this is pretty standard affair. That is, of course, until your hand is 6 cards or less. Now, the good news is this activates the bonus, the only way to earn positive points in this game. The bad news is that once you've done this, you cannot pass anymore, and the game becomes a lot more volatile. See, card shedding games have always been about emptying your hand as fast as possible, right? And to end the round, you have to do just that. Doing so will earn you 0 points. Everyone else will lose a point for every card in their hand. However, if you have less than 6, then you can add the lowest value card to your hand.
In this example, we ended the game with 3 cards, giving us the bonus. So we have -3, but we add 7 to give us 4 points total, which is higher than any score I've made in this game so far. If your memory is sharp, you'll remember that I mentioned artifacts. These are a new addition to the game compared to its original iteration that I'll never own, Taylor. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. Please, don't put in the newspaper that I got mad. These artifacts offer unique powers that get rinsed and reused over and over throughout the game. These cards are cheeky. The starting player is determined by the Go First artifact, which appears in every game, but the others do wild things like pass the lead to someone else, or demand that you lead the next trick regardless of who wins it. There's the highest single card, which can only be played as a single, but regular cards range from 2 to 13, so it is effectively a 14, making it the strongest card in the game. That is, unless the half-point card is in play, which will always be a half-point higher than the highest number last played. The retrieve card is a favorite. After a trick, all the cards just get tossed aside. But before that, you can play this to go digging through it like a raccoon through a dumpster, picking all the little pieces you may want, maybe missing pieces of a run, or strengthen a set for later. Maybe you're jealous of other people's artifacts and you can take them for yourself. The possibilities are endless. I love this thing. You can mix and match the artifacts in every game, keeping it fresh and exciting. Playing this over 4 rounds, you're going to use the same ones over and over in different combinations. This really builds a fascinating way to see people express themselves, and the fun familiarity you build with the artifacts over the game. So, you must be asking yourself, where does SEERS Catalog stand in the massive stack of card-shedding games in the collection? The theme itself is quite the mixed bag. On a gameplay level, it's practically non-existent, and yet the game seems to know that was inevitable, and instead makes the cards more just tiny eye candies of trinkets, memorabilia, and even other games. The text on them can be chuckle-worthy, without invoking a sense of forced comedy, as that always runs dry in games. And not only is the title incredible nostalgia for older Americans who peruse the vintage SEERS books, but the artifacts are detailed in what is basically their own catalog, and that just feels clever. Okay, I will put a small pause in the overflowing praise to say that the color choices in this game are bold. Bold in a sense that they aren't necessarily for everyone. Yes, the flat tones make for a vintage feel the game wants to evoke, but it also feels muted and not quite copacetic with the exciting pace the game can take. What I feel is slightly less subjective is the iconography on the artifacts. These have excellent intentions of helping the players remember how to play them, as some can be played on their own, while others have to join other cards and even other fiddlier conditions. The problem is that in my plays, I found that they usually distracted players, including myself, more than they helped.
What the f am I looking at?
The result is a moment of obnoxious fiddliness, as players are constantly having to check the references, maybe look in the book, and even though the rule check may have been done in other rounds, you might get a different one. Or new players who didn't have the artifact before now have to recheck and look at the manual again, and it can get tedious. Very tedious. That aside, SEERS Catalog hits on a very special level. My understanding is there are a large number of people who say SEERS would be better without the artifacts, closer to the original game that I won't mention. But I couldn't disagree enough. Every time this game was shuffled up, it was clear the game's balance of teetering on the edge of emptying your hand was enough to make a fine game. But the artifacts truly push it beyond. Every round, at least a half dozen moments will happen, where someone drops the lead next card, or plays a perfectly timed half card, or better yet, plays the retrieve card to pick up all those lovely artifacts. Each one prompting several genuine oohs and ahs, time and time again. This is a crowd pleaser. It is made by someone who has a clear love, a deep love for the genre specifically.
I'd go so far as to say this might be one of the best card games made in recent history. However, if you're like me and still upset Mr. Reiner deprived you of amazing Saibepu art, don't worry, the manual has you covered. Here in the back, it mentions him, saying he has a local YouTube channel about trick-taking and climbing shedding games called Coco Melon. That's the ticket. You need to go to that YouTube channel, Coco Melon, and voice your discrepancies there. I'm sure they'll understand. So, there you go. Some creepy card games for your enjoyment. All of them fantastic, albeit some are better than others. I doubt anyone weird enough to sit through this entire video would regret owning any of these. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Tell me about these games, if you played them, and of course, let me know what card games you love to pull out for the spookiest of evenings. Until next time, take care.
Stew teacher, you forgot to say the thing.
The thing?
Yeah, you've been in that suit for half an hour, and you're not gonna say the line?
What line? What are you... Oh, good grief.